everybody. This is the Busted Business Bureau. I'm Christian Borky. This podcast is produced by the Lincoln Lodge in Chicago, Illinois. If you like the podcast, perhaps consider donating to my Patreon at patreon.com/bustedbizbureau. Otherwise, please keep rating and leaving reviews. It really helps me out on the business end of things for the algorithm. You get it. Today, I have a returning guest of the podcast, a dear friend. Her episode is one of the most popular in the podcast. It is Danaka and her roommate, Nic.
Yeah.
Hey. Hey guys, how you doing this morning?
I'm good. I know that you record it on video now, but just in case someone is just listening and can't see us, I just want everyone to know how good Nic looks right now.
Thank you.
Nic is wearing full Oakland Athletics regalia.
Thank you. Yeah, I dress up for the occasion. I don't get to wear this very often, so.
Do you not?
No, I don't. It's kind of flashy, so I don't really like to wear it out, but
They've also, Danica is in Sox garb, and you two have bestowed upon me a Biscuits jersey. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me about the Biscuits?
Yeah, so the Montgomery Biscuits are a team from... am I being too loud? Or?
No, you're just funny. It's the Montgomery Biscuits, you're so matter of fact.
Montgomery Biscuits are a team from Montgomery, Alabama. They're a AA team for the Tampa Bay Rays. That means they're just a minor league team where, like, the younger guys go. Mm-hmm. People who are less good at baseball than, like, people who are on the Rays. Okay, they go there and develop and get better, and then they eventually make it to the majors, or they don't.
A name like the Montgomery Biscuits is unstoppable. Yeah. I feel very powerful in this jersey right now.
Yeah, their mascot is a little biscuit with a tongue that's butter.
Oh, yeah, it's on your jersey.
It's on the jersey.
Right Holy shit, you're kidding.
It's on the sleeve. Yeah.
Oh, my God, that's goofy.
What do you think his name is?
Braxby.
It's Monty. he's from Montgomery. Monty the Biscuit.
He's so cute.
Yeah, he's got little fun eyes and little hands.
Now, it's fun to be an adult and wearing this as your uniform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, trying to be like a professional baseball
Imagine
player.
how the guy in the biscuit suit feels.
That's all I think about is the guy in the biscuit suit.
I used to work as the guy, not in the biscuit suit, but like as a mascot around a sports park. It was terrible. It was like a regional sports park. I had to dress up like a cardinal. And for some reason, I had to push Chick-fil-A sandwiches, which was unreal. I didn't work for Chick-fil-A. I worked for the sports park. But that was like my main goal. I had to like carry out a Chick-fil-A sign. Anyways, this mini group of episodes. Oh, this is like the first episode of season 4, by the way. So you guys are on another debut. Danica was on the debut of season 2. And so this is, life's a circle. Mm-hmm. This is the debut of season 4. And it's going to start off this season with a mini group of episodes. This one's the MLB. The next one's going to be the NFL and then the NHL. And this is sort of a fool's errand to understand sports because my brothers all really like sports. All the men in my life really like sports. And I hardly fucking understand a lick of it.
Did you say you were doing one about the NBA or no?
I could.
Because I only have one thing to say about that. And then
let me hear it.
It's funny because like Barack Obama, kind of union busted at the NBA.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't kinda. He did.
He did.
Like, I don't know why it worked. Like, if Barack Obama called me and said, don't do this, I'd be like, who are you? My dad?
Well, I'm glad to know that you are immune to the call of Barack Obama, but many others apparently are no such.
I'd probably do whatever he asks.
Anyways, you know what? Perhaps that'll be episode 4. I don't know. I'm flying by the seat of my pants most of the time on this podcast. This is astounding that I'm here. I went to bed at 4 a.m., woke up at 9, picked you two up for brunch, and now we're here.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Full of potatoes.
Full of potatoes and a little bit of a Bloody Maria, he said. Because it's a mezcal Bloody Mary.
That guy was so pleasant.
Oh, he
really
was the
made
best.
my morning.
We went to Dove's Luncheonette, by the way, in Logan, which is fucking awesome. Anyways, despite the massive gorilla grip that professional sports have on our culture and daily lives, I know very little about the... Thank you for laughing at something I wrote in the script. I know very little about the business end of it. Even the MLB, which I've spent, the whole episode trying to research and understand, it's still an $11 billion industry that I am not prepared to field every single question about. You two seem to know a lot more about it than I do. Am I correct?
I like to think I know a lot about it, but I might not.
Maybe you don't.
Yeah. No. I spend a lot of time playing a game on my computer where it's basically just looking at spreadsheets and being like, it's a simulated baseball game.
For real?
But it's just about the numbers. I don't get to play. Like, I don't swing the bat. I just be like, that guy looks good. And then I offer him a contract. And yeah,
what?
So I spend time doing that.
What is the game called?
It's called Out of the Park Baseball. It's wonderful. It's great.
That's fucking awesome. Yeah. That's such like an adult game. Like when you're a kid, you think about what adults play.
Mm-hmm. It's like a spreadsheet game with numbers and
and chance. It's like the roll of a dice. I love that.
Yeah, exactly. It's fun.
I generally know a little bit, and it's just because that I kind of dated someone who had a minor league contract, and I read it, and I was like, oh, this is indentured servitude.
Yeah. We're going to be talking about that. Believe you me. I just like grew up in a baseball family, and that's like I know like the rules of baseball. I played softball when I was in high school. In fact, in one of my most Zac Efron moments, I was like in the play and in softball at the same time, and this girl was like, "You better stop playing dyke ball if you want to get like a better part in the play." She was a senior and I was a freshman too, and I was just like laughed because I thought it was funny that she was so like cliche movie girl. Anyway, that's my connection to the MLB is that I played dyke ball in high school.
They don't offer scholarships for that anymore.
They don't. I know. This is the future liberals want. I know. So we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar industry here, but I don't know what franchise owners do. I don't know why we get frequent and seasonally devastating lockouts. Like the state of labor relations in the MLB is what I was mostly looking at when I was trying to do the history of this episode and try and piece together why we have the thing that we have today. So that's the journey that I plan on taking you two on. However, I do want to start with sort of a Chekhov's gun situation here. Like I want to introduce something in Act 1 to bring back at a later point. Do you two know who Bernie Madoff is?
I do, yes.
I assume you do. Do you know who Bernie Madoff is?
No.
Really? Not even a little bit?
Is this the person you asked me to pretend not to know?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay, then yeah.
You do know who Bernie Madoff is?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. For those uninitiated, he's the executor of like one of the largest Ponzi schemes in history. He was the chairman of NASDAQ in the 90s. And put simply, he promised to take people's money from like old ladies' retirement to people's like stock portfolios, whatever, and invest it. Then when they take out the money, there'll be more than they started because he's supposed to be such a savvy investor. And to put it like grossly oversimply, to just explain what a Ponzi scheme is, it's as if he had it all in one bank account and just like gave people taking out their money that new people gave in. You know, that's like how a Ponzi scheme works. That's essentially what it was. He was worth like $66 billion, and there was this huge thing in 2008 that he went down. He went down like with the economic recession under Obama. Obama called him.
Obama called him, said,
you gotta shut this down, man. So again, with that setup, I will not be telling you where this appears in the story, but I just wanted to put that out there that this is it's a Chekhov's gun. What can I say? I do theater. I don't do baseball. Anyways, back to the MLB. The thing that stuck out most to me when trying to think of the MLB is that every single major league sport in the U.S. falls under is governed by, regulated with the Sherman Antitrust Act, but the MLB is the only one, to my knowledge, that has a bunch of exemptions to the Antitrust Act, which is a slay.
They had almost full antitrust exemption until like 98.
Yeah.
Like for 75 years they had it. And the initial reasoning for it is so stupid.
And we're going to talk about it.
Okay, you have it later?
I hope so. Yeah, okay. That's like going all the way back to like 1922 or whatever. Yeah, like federal baseball.
Yeah, it's so unbelievably dumb.
I'm so glad you know about this. This is a huge thing.
I told you I wrote a whole paper on this. It's in there.
Well, fantastic. So yeah, the MLB is the only major league sport that has a number of antitrust exemptions. This was decided in 1922 and has never really been fully fixed, obviously. Or at least the decision in 1922 did not count baseball as interstate commerce. And so
it's insane.
Fucking awesome.
And like put into today, like calling a baseball game not interstate commerce is ridiculous. It's like literally two teams from different states are playing each other. It's insane.
They're broadcast across, dare I say, all the states.
Yeah.
You know, sports player, like, it doesn't make sense at all. And I didn't learn this until recently. Baseball players have to file taxes in every state that they've ever played in.
Yes. It's called the jock tax.
Yeah.
I think.
Their paychecks come from, they get filed in the state that they play their games in. They get game checks. And Florida and like Texas are heavy free agent destinations because they don't have to pay taxes on half their games.
Yeah.
So it's like a reason why people go play in Florida.
Isn't that fucking crazy, though? What an inefficient way to do this, again, like $11 billion industry sport or whatever. Mm-hmm. So back before, let's talk about why this antitrust thing is in place. Before the MLB, there was this group of disparate professional baseball leagues, to put it simply. And to make a long motherfucking story short, I guess a bunch of clubs in different leagues had consolidated around 1922. Is this sounding right? Because I only have like a girl's understanding of, like a young girl's understanding of what the MLB is. So a bunch of teams had consolidated, and I believe what I'm going to say is slightly inaccurate, but this is the only way I was able to understand it. Like, let's say there's two different leagues that are out of St. Louis. The one league had paid off the other St. Louis team so that there could only be like one baseball team in St. Louis. And quite simply, there were no such things in place for the Baltimore Terrapins, a team that does not still exist. And so the Baltimore Terrapins were like, well, the league is just gone now, and we were professional baseball players. Now there's no league, and everyone had consolidated without us. I think that might be like a trust of sorts, dare I say. And so they sued what was, it's not the MLB at this point, but what is the nascent, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, it was, the Federation League was the one that got consumed.
Yes.
Like, almost entirely, and then there was one owner who was like, that's not right, that shouldn't happen. So he was the one that sued. I think at the time it was MLB.
It was MLB?
Yeah.
Slay.
I think so.
I thought it was the AL and the NL still at that point.
Yeah, it was.
Was
it was
the
before
American League?
it was before they became MLB.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in the Baltimore Terrapins lawsuit, initially his lawsuit is a success, right? And they're like, yeah, you know what? This does violate antitrust things that we have in place. Then in appeals, they were like, actually, just kidding. Fuck you, Baltimore Terrapins. Then it winds up at the desk of the Supreme Court where they are to litigate again, it's the nascent MLB. It's not called the MLB, but like it's the groups that will become the MLB.
Yeah. Like the American League and National League are still around, and that's what makes up MLB today. Just people might not know what antitrust laws are.
I had that in here. I didn't want to be condescending.
But there's just because it's a little bit confusing, and it's not like some laws have names where you're like, oh, I know what that is. But it's just like to stop companies from colluding to keep, like, for example, prices down, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Or like colluding on prices. It's to prevent monopolies. So like preventing one Major League Baseball from sort of stopping any other professional leagues from popping up.
Which we did a great job doing that.
Yeah.
Famously, there's a rich and wide diversity of baseball leagues that one could play in professionally that are not under the MLB. Yeah. We did an awesome job regulating that. And generally, I know it's been like a point of clowning on this podcast before of how just like a joke antitrust stuff in the United States is. But yes, I always think of, when I think of like antitrust, I always think like anti-monopoly. That's like the word that more makes me understand what is going on here. But thank you. I literally had that in here, and then I was like, you know what? It might be condescending to explain what a trust is, so I'm going to put that away. You're just on my same fucking wavelength. All right, anyways, so we wind up all the way at the Supreme Court for this Baltimore Terrapins lawsuit, and the initial, I'm sorry, I just said all of that. And the Supreme Court is like, we agree with appeals, basically. Professional baseball, as it stands, is not a monopoly. It's not interstate commerce, and therefore should not be federally regulated. And the guy who was the author of this decision is Justice, I think it's Oliver Orville Holmes, who is a, quote, bookish, unathletic child who had likely never seen a game of baseball in his life.
That's tough.
He doesn't even know what baseball is, and he's like, I know it's probably not commerce.
He's like, it's a game?
He had likely never even heard a radio broadcast of baseball. Like, he's older than that. So the guy doesn't like baseball, doesn't care about baseball. This also, I found out that President William Taft was on the Supreme Court. I didn't know that he did both those things in his lifetime, and he was like the big guy on the Supreme Court at the time, the major
he
guy.
was a big guy.
He was a big guy.
So he, like, retired and then became president?
No, he did president first and then Supreme Court.
What? Oh,
right?
I thought he died in the bathtub.
He got... What are you talking
Mandela effect. Mandela effect, I thought Taft died in the bathtub.
You thought we had a president that died getting stuck in the bathtub?
Because I never heard how they got him out of there.
Just
so
probably butter.
Stayed in. They buttered up our big, huge... We're due for a big, huge president.
JB.
J. Bob Pritzker.
Is that his name?
Yes.
Yeah,
I never knew that.
That's what JB stands
That's
for.
a sweet name.
J-Bob.
Why does he go by J-Bob Moore? Anyways, yeah. It makes you wonder if Justice Holmes would have imagined the state of the MLB today. Certainly not when he was authoring that opinion. Anyways, there's been a few unsuccessful lawsuits since then to challenge federal baseball. That's like the title of the fucking whatever. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Legally, though, as it stands today, this precedent remains unchallenged for like a fucking century. It is laughable thinking that baseball is not interstate commerce, especially considering that we classify every other major league sport as such. I guess I repeated myself a lot when I wrote this. A lot of this was written at 2 a.m. today. Like, I got home from work and I was like, oh, fuck, I gotta finish this. So these antitrust exemptions are the golden goose for the MLB. This lawsuit enshrined a series of like labor rights bullshit that would remain for decades after that. And one such piece of bullshit is the reserve clause. Are you familiar with that?
Of course.
Can you tell me a little bit about the reserve clause?
So the reserve clause was in baseball up until 72?
76. It was challenged in 72, which we'll talk about, but it was like done
76.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because, it was Messersmith, and then we'll get there. We'll get there. And basically it allowed teams to auto-renew contracts every single year. So, like, if you had a guy on your team who you were paying $50,000 to play, you could just say, we're going to do that again, and you're stuck on our team. So it made sure that players were stuck on their teams their entire careers, unless the teams decided they didn't want them. So, like, teams would just be like, we're done with you, and then that person would enter, like, a form of free agency, but different from it is today.
Yeah.
Like, there was not a big free agency market, kind of. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And back in the early days of baseball, like 1876, this is predating the reserve clause, owners and players had operated under what is more or less a freer system wherein players would actually shop around for contracts from different clubs and accept the contract with the highest number of zeros on it, whatever. The owners are not making much money in this 1876 era of baseball, and so they had decided, they, I guess, colluded to come up with this reserve clause. By 1879, there's this system in place where basically, like you said, it auto-renews the contract year after year, which I've tried to understand, like, how or why that's, like, a thing you can do, and which is also a fool's errand. But initially, it was that they were allowed to reserve 5 players on their roster per year, so they staked their claim on, like, 5 players, and all the other owners respected that, and were not allowed to offer contracts to these 5 players. Every other player was allowed to shop around except for those 5. Again, this is, like, the early reserve clause. Once the 5 players' contracts were negotiated, confirmed or denied, then they were free to shop around. But there's an additional caveat added on top of that. And this part I'm helped by this book called Pay Dirt, The Business of Professional Team Sports by James Quirk and Rodney D. Fort. Great read. I found it on Scribd. So the clause states that it is further understood and agreed that the party of the first part of the team shall have the right to reserve the said party of the second part. It's just like fucking snooze fest.
Yeah.
The interpretation placed on this clause by owners was part of a perpetual option of the player's services for his playing lifetime in the sport, and this is backed up by the agreement of other owners to not hire the players who are on the reserve list of other teams.
I feel like people think about athletes differently from other, like, workers.
Let's talk about it.
And because, like, imagine, Christian, you work at the Lincoln Lodge. Imagine every year they're like, you can't go.
You are not allowed to go anywhere else. You are legally bound. You signed a contract saying you have to work here.
And you're going to make the same amount of money every single year.
Or
imagine the Lincoln Lodge goes, hey, actually, we're just going to trade you to the Owl. We like their young guys over there. We're going to trade you for one of the young guys. We know you're veteran talent. You've done a lot for this team, but we're going to send you over there. So have a good time. They could just do that.
They also had the option to cut your salary by up to 20% if, like, you just were kind of a bitch about it. Yeah. If you're like, I don't think I want to keep working at the Lodge, they'd be like, well, that's too bad.
That's crazy.
Enjoy 80% of what you made last year because that's all you're getting this year. If I got traded to the Owl, I would flee the country.
Like they got a lot of young prospects, okay? Up and coming young guys.
I went to the Owl once on a Monday night at 2 a.m.
That's the best time to go.
It was actually kind of empty. I was pleasantly surprised at how empty it was.
I was there.
Have you seen that Twitter account that's like...
I was in the photo booth.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
There's a Twitter account of somebody who lives right next to the Owl recording fights outside the Owl.
Oh, yeah, I have seen that.
God, I love this fucking city. So what emerges from this is that players are bound in perpetuity to their original owner that they sign on until the owner decides to trade them. If that sounds fishy, it's because it is. It's because we don't think of professional athletes the same way that we think of everybody else, which I want to sidebar. A lot of people have this conception that pro athletes are paid too much money. Yeah. I want to hear your thoughts on this.
No.
No, they're not paid too much
money. Yeah.
There's like the millionaires versus billionaires debate when it comes to like labor relations. But in like a Marxist sense, technically, the players are still underpaid. Like they are the means of production.
The amount of wealth they create for other people
is still disproportionate. Like, they don't get paid enough. And it's weird to say for, guys like Bryce Harper or Mike Trout who are making almost $500 million over their careers, that they're not technically being paid enough for their labor. But it's true.
Yeah, they do create a lot of wealth for the owners, and then they also have to kind of give up a lot for their jobs too, that I think a lot of people don't think about. Like the fact that you can just one day walk into the locker room and then be told you're being sent down to the minor leagues. You have to move. Oh, I just bought a house here. Like my kids just got put in school here. Like they have families that all of a sudden just have to uproot their entire lives and move, even if they've been in a place for a really long time. Also, they spent it's 6 months of just work. You don't really have days off, and you spend most of the days working, whether you're at practice or working out. All those things count as work that you're doing.
I agree 1,000%. And that's, I always have wondered why we don't have that popular idea that they're not why everyone is just pro athletes make too much money. And I wonder if it's people assume that since they are celebrities or they enjoy the benefits of fame or popularity or whatever, that we don't have to compensate them more. But I'm glad that you two were immediately on the train of they're not paid enough, because that was also my gut reaction. And I was I have to be wrong because everyone says they're overpaid. So surely I'm missing something.
I mean, people look at the fringe cases of Bryce Harper and Mike Trout and Machado making $300 million, but it's really the guys on the bottom who are making less money, and it's not even it's a lifetime career. Baseball,
it's an average of 4 years, right?
Yeah, it's a very low average, and if you're good, you're there for 12. If you're really good, you're there for 12 years, and you're not going to make a low-level player is not going to make generational wealth from a 12-year baseball career, which is why most of them go into real estate afterwards.
Or podcasts.
Or podcasts.
Do they for real?
Oh,
that's a joke.
There's so many podcasts. Just old baseball guys. Yeah. No, there's a few real estate agents in my hometown that were old baseball players.
For real?
Yeah.
That is hysterical. Yeah. Where's your hometown?
San Ramon, California.
Slay.
It's beautiful this time of year.
Buy a house there.
Well.
Good luck.
Good luck, yeah. This housing market's going.
Can we just talk about the housing market?
It's time to sidebar for the housing market. But yes, Quirk and Fort's analysis of the reserve clause, which I've written in here for whatever reason, is, quote, whatever an outside observer might think about the economic implications of the reserve clause or its equity, still, from a professional point of view, it's hard not to marvel at the subtle, convoluted, and diabolical legal mind that put this beauty together. Which is a fucking awesome sentence.
Diabolical legal mind.
I was them's fighting words. But I want to talk about why we no longer have the reserve clause, sort of the series of events that took place that have undone it. And that is mostly precipitated by a guy called Curt FLood. Familiar?
Of course.
Familiar?
Of course.
I love that. So with the groundwork laid that the players in the MLB are operating under the reserve clause, it's time to talk about this guy, Curt FLood. And I'm helped in this section in massive part because of Brad Snyder's book, A Well-Paid Slave, Curt FLood's Fight for Free Agency in Professional Sports, which I have with me right here. I got it on thriftbooks.com because it didn't have it at my library, so I had to get it.
Have you finished it yet?
Yeah. Do you want it?
kind of want to borrow it, yeah.
Of course. This is so crazy. I'm talking about an episode that hasn't come out yet, but Christian said the same thing. I brought a hockey book, and he was like, can I have it? I said, yeah. Anyways, before we dive into the contents of the book and FLood's life and battle, I want to talk about the acknowledgement section of the book. Brad Snyder opens it with, quote, "Some people thought I was crazy when I quit my job practicing law at a prominent Washington, D.C. firm to write this book. I had no book deal and no agent. A lawyer advised me that I'd be labeled a dilettante. My friends teased me that I needed to get a real job. Maybe they were both right, but I never regretted my decision to write full-time and to tell the story of Curt FLood and his lawsuit."
Wow.
Wait, who's that acknowledging?
Himself.
The haters? He's like, they told me I couldn't do it, but I wrote the book anyways.
He kind of starts off by like kind of sucking himself off a little bit.
Yeah.
He's like, I had I had a very prominent job, but I left it.
He was an Esquire.
He was an
Whoa!
Oh my God, it's come.
Yeah.
That's crazy that you two read it as sucking himself off. I read that
At just the beginning, and then it took a turn for the worst.
I read it as like, I threw away my life to write this fucking book, and I had no deal and no agent. That's hysterical. Like, he was so captivated by Curt FLood's story that he had to write a book about it. And the book is also full of very much first-time author vibes of his little historicisms of being like, this guy wasn't racist towards Curt FLood. He just didn't like that Curt FLood was young. And it's like,
yeah, we should make a distinction before we talk about Curt FLood. Everyone was racist towards Curt FLood.
Everyone was racist towards Curt FLood.
Like, literally.
Period. There's end of sentence.
Everyone except for the king, Marvin Miller. But
Marvin Miller.
Literally, like, everyone was. The fans, the owners, the managers, everybody. I mean, it wasn't just Curt FLood. It was
any black player.
They were just being racist towards Curt FLood.
Yeah.
It was every black player, especially in the time he played, which was like right in the 60s. I think his career started in like 64. 62, 64, something like that.
Your guess is as good as mine.
And it was right in the middle of the civil rights movement. So he was like the direct recipient of death threats. And I'm sure you're going to talk about it. So
let's keep talking about it. This guy, Curt FLood, to start, he's born in the, quote, black section of the Jefferson Davis Hospital in Texas in 1938. And he grew up in Oakland, California. And this is not Brad's analysis. This is my analysis because I need to explain the quote in the following way. I believe he grew up in a predominantly black neighborhood and therefore ostensibly did not see a lot of segregation because he didn't have other people to be segregated from, which is the only way that I can explain the following quote, in which he arrives at a spring training camp in Florida in 1956. So this is in the South. It's going to be a segregated spring training camp. From Snyder's book, quote, "Barely a month past his 18th birthday, FLood was waiting for his luggage in a Tampa airport's baggage claim area when he saw two water fountains, one labeled white and the other colored. Quote, for a wild instant," FLood said, "I wondered whether the signs meant club soda and Coke."
Wow.
So imagine
a Coke water fountain.
Yeah.
That would be delicious.
God, those pipes
especially
would
corroded.
Yeah,
but imagine at the airport you're waiting for your bags.
Mm-hmm.
You get to just walk over to a water
sip of Coca-Cola.
Oh, refreshing.
That everyone else has had their mouth on.
Yeah. But unfortunately, that's not what the signs meant.
That is not what the signs meant.
Yeah. Very unfortunately.
No, yeah, very unfortunately.
That was quite a culture shock. And after a series of, again, like, horrific conditions in his segregated spring trainings and a brief baseball-related stint in Venezuela, I think it was also for some sort of training, where he had dysentery for a month.
Oh. Is that that's the one where you shit?
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of people have died of dysentery. A lot of people still die of dysentery.
I died
You might have dysentery.
I died from dysentery on the Oregon Trail. The game.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
I was not actually there, guys.
You know what? I would have believed you. You said it with such confidence. Love that for you. He finally makes it to the MLB, and during his early years in the minors, he'd selected the number 42 to honor Jackie Robinson, who was the first black baseball player in the MLB. When he makes it to the majors, he picked the number 21, which is half of Robinson's number. He mentions all the time how much he looks up to Jackie Robinson. FLood spends 12 years on the St. Louis Cardinals and blossoms into his adulthood, both on and off the field. Off the field, he's known as a sensitive, bookish type on the team. He listens to classical music, plays piano by ear, reads books, and he paints oil portraits. And I need to stop for a second to talk about his oil portrait business.
Business?
You don't know anything about this?
I don't know anything about this.
He got this reputation in MLB as the guy who's gonna like paint portraits of your kids and paint portraits, like oil portraits of nice stuff to hang in your house. Like, people thought they were so good. He actually painted a portrait of Martin Luther King Jr. that was in the White House.
Oh my God. I didn't know this at all.
However.
Are they hideous?
No, they're not.
Oh, okay.
They're quite beautiful.
Okay.
Like, people had to send him like a reference photo so he could like paint basically what the photo is. He didn't paint any of them. He sent them to a guy in California who just oil painted over the photo. He had a fucking fraudulent oil painting business. This is the real Busted Business Bureau. Is Curt FLood's oil painting business?
What the fuck?
That's genius.
And it went in the White House. Like, oh God.
How did that story break?
It's in this, unless
Like,
Brad Snyder made it up.
Like,
He's got a very broad
imagination.
imagination.
Like, I wonder if the guy who he sent it to, told,
Tattled?
like, made, like, a little notes app Instagram post.
If he saw it on the news one day, he was like, what the hell?
Wait a minute.
My shit's
He's
in
like,
the White House.
That's my Martin Luther King Jr. It's like, whoa.
I considered not talking about it, and then I was like, no, I gotta talk about this fraudulent oil painting business.
That's crazy.
So that is right.
Well, it goes to show you, he wasn't getting paid enough.
Period.
He had to make more money on the side.
He had several businesses, like this guy, and he was one of the highest paid players, like, in the league. On the field, FLood had climbed his way towards the top of the salary bond in baseball. I say salary bond like that was a thing. He was just like at the top of dudes making money. An exceptional center fielder year over year, FLood's salary was $90,000 in 1969. Many had speculated that he'd become the first guy to break 100K in baseball, which is huge for anyone, let alone a black player who's, coming right off the tailbone. Why did I say that? Cuffs.
Right off the tail.
The tail. Of only, like, it's not that long after Jackie Robinson had first even, like, broken the barrier in the MLB in the first place. So that is pretty crazy, exceptional stuff. But FLood then gets a phone call from a sports writer, no less, that he's going to be traded to the Philadelphia Phillies for the 1970s season. Devastating. He had spent, the 12 years in St. Louis, built his life there, had several businesses, had 5 kids, a wife, a house, friends,
7
roots.
really solid businesses.
He also, this is not relevant to the telling of the story, but his bestie is a white woman 30 years his senior, and everyone is like, why are you two friends? He's just like, we vibe. I don't know what to tell you.
That's beautiful.
As someone who, like, has unlikely friendships like that, I'm like, I get it.
That's
Wow,
really
he's
funny.
way more interesting than I knew about.
Really?
Just looking at the, labor part.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And she is actually one of the people who's like, you should do the events that are going to happen after this. She's a very key instigator in the situation. But yeah, I really get having a friend who's like 30 years your senior. They were also roommates. It was him, his brother, and her.
Where does wife live?
Oh, I don't know if they were married.
Oh, that
at
was
point.
okay.
That
was prior.
But anyways, he gets this call again from a sports writer, not even like the manager or the owner or whatever. I mean, like, you're getting traded to Philly, and he's like, I'm not going to Philadelphia for a multitude of reasons, many of which are logistical, many of which are they're incredibly racist in Philadelphia, as they are everywhere, but like especially Philadelphia.
Philly was known to black players as like a dangerous place to play. Like, you had like black players in the outfield had to wear helmets because people would throw stuff. Phillies fans would throw stuff at their own players.
Jesus Christ.
They would throw like batteries, and were there batteries back then in the 70s? Did we have those batteries and cans of cola or something? I don't know, soda.
Did they have batteries?
I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
I believe they did, in fact, have batteries in the 70s.
They were throwing batteries at them.
Yeah, Mike.
They would have.
This is your Taft moment.
No, you thought we had a president. We would have to fold the country. The whole thing would have to go down. We would have had to say, wrap it up, folks. Country's over. If we had a president die from getting stuck in the bathtub.
Also, like, how would he... You'd have to die by, like, starvation or...
Well, and then he would get so thin he'd just slide right out.
That's so true. It's impossible to get stuck in a bathtub for that long.
Yeah, because you'll always just
I'm
be like, well,
begging you,
now.
if you're just like an audio-only listener, I need you to check out the video of how intense Nick was telling Danica, like, he's the president of the United States. He did not die in the bathtub.
It would just be the craziest story of all time.
So, yeah, anyways, Philadelphia, the south of the north, basically.
Well, I'm glad he's alive and well.
Yeah, thank God.
Taft.
God bless Taft.
I'm sorry.
Wherever he is now. All this is to say, Curt FLood writes a letter to the baseball commissioner at the time, Bowie Kuhn. Dear Mr. Kuhn, this is how the letter goes. After 12 years in the major leagues, I do not feel that I'm a piece of property to be bought and sold irrespective of my wishes. I believe that any system which produces that result violates my basic rights as a citizen and is inconsistent with the laws of the United States and of several states. It's my desire to play baseball in 1970, and I'm capable of playing. I've received a contract offer from the Philadelphia club, but I believe I have the right to consider offers from other clubs before making any decisions. I therefore request that you make known to all major league clubs my feelings in this matter, and advise them of my availability for the 1970 season. Sincerely yours, Curt FLood. Meow. Good letter.
It's very nice.
This letter's going to ruin this man's fucking life. I'll tell you what. The request is ignored, obviously, and Curt FLood starts hearing from two very important sources in his life. One is the lady that I mentioned earlier, the white woman who's like 30 years a senior. She's like, why don't you sue the MLB? Like, this is not how other businesses work.
Yeah.
It's crazy that this is how this business works. This is your job. You should be able to consider options. The other is his lawyer, who is not Marvin Miller. It's like a separate guy named like Zerman or something that basically said the same thing to him. What mostly inspires him, though, like you were talking about, he played a lot of his career during the civil rights movement of the 60s, and he mentions all the time how inspired he was and how his consciousness had clearly changed over the time that he was playing baseball. And so, I don't think I need to super harp on the fact that the civil rights movement was important. Curt FLood approaches the MLB Players Association leader Marvin Miller. Woo!
That's my boy.
That's your boy?
God bless him.
What do you know about Marvin Miller?
Where do you want me to start?
Anywhere you want to go.
He was like the first official union president. I think it was he might have been the second, but it was in '66. Mm-hmm. He came over from the United Steelworkers Union, and he was like essentially the biggest organizer in the country at the time. He came over and helped organize the league, and since he became the leader of the union, salaries like tripled, almost overnight. I think it was in '76 when the Flood Act happened. The highest paid player was like $150,000, and Mike Schmidt on the Phillies, I think. Mm-hmm. And after that, the next guy up was like $500,000, like the next year, the first free agent.
My God.
Yeah, so he got player salaries like way up immediately.
Many people meeting him for the first time underestimated Marvin Julian Miller. That's his full name. This is from Snyder's book, quote, at 5'8" and 150 pounds, which is like, I'm like 5'7" and like 135, so he's not that much bigger than me.
No.
He had a right shoulder damaged at birth, and he looked slight and vulnerable. He spoke in slow, measured sentences and never raised his voice, but beneath the polite and charming demeanor lay a no-holds-barred fighter and relentless negotiator. He believed he could accomplish anything, despite his bum shoulder. This is again.
You don't need to harp on it, man.
This guy had a fucked up, disgusting shoulder.
Horrible.
But man, could he talk.
Birth defect, that guy.
Gross.
He willed himself into becoming a fine tennis and handball player. His wife Terry often teased him by calling him JC or Don Quixote. He liked the impossible dream, she said. He's eager for the impossible fight.
His wife's weird.
Teasing him by calling him Don Quixote?
I'm saying... So I wanted to undercut every single thing you said with that dumbass paragraph, because he is all those things that you said.
Yeah.
And that's how Snyder chose to introduce him.
What the fuck?
Mentioning his bum shoulder twice and saying his wife used to tease him. And he's small and diminutive, but boy, could he hold a room? I don't know.
Boy, was he aware of union contracts.
Yeah.
I'm excited to read that book. Everything you've read from it is so bizarre.
It's so weird. When he's talking about the white woman friend, he's like, they didn't have a weird sexual thing or anything. That's how it's said in the book. This book is fucking awesome.
What would be so weird about it, Mr. Snyder?
I'm saying.
What would be so weird about it? It's natural.
Whoa.
It's natural. It's beautiful.
Yeah, sidebar to talk about how sex is natural and beautiful, Brad Snyder.
Just saying, I think Snyder needs to take a step back.
I've never had an episode where I clowned on the book this hard. This book is kind of clown-worthy in addition to being a good account of the shit that happened. Anyways, so Curt FLood approaches Marvin Miller, and the stakes for him are set almost immediately by Miller. quote, "It's a 1,000,000 to 1 shot, but even if that 1,000,000 to 1 shot comes home, you're still not going to get any damages. No trial court in America was going to award damages retroactively to a ball player making $90K a year under a player contract in trades that have been deemed legal by the Supreme Court for 50 years. A win at the Supreme Court would still mean a loss for FLood." He explained that a lawsuit would take at least 2 or 3 years, and by that time the court made a decision, FLood would be 34. He would lose 3 seasons and nearly $300,000 in salary. His playing career would be over. This would end any aspirations he had to be the first black major league manager. FLood would be blacklisted. But would it benefit all the other players and players to come, wouldn't it? FLood asked. Miller said that it would. "That's good enough for me," FLood replied.
Yeah, a distinction with Curt FLood was that he was like fully willing to accept that it was his responsibility to like be the first guy in the water, I guess.
Yeah.
He was like, he saw it as an opportunity rather than like something that was happening to him. That's like a difference between Curt FLood and a lot of other trailblazers.
Yeah.
It was like, he like, it wasn't forced on him. He elected to do it. Yeah.
And it's also important that he's one of the highest paid players in the league, because if it was someone who was like one of the lower guys, it'd be like, oh, well, he's doing this because he's jealous. He's doing this because like he is scrapping for more, whatever. So it's important that a guy with like that much power and wealth, as a Curt FLood, is the guy just like taking the L on this.
Yeah. Yeah, he's inspiring.
He is inspiring. And I know that based on the history of the podcast and given the long and flowery background of the guy really setting up for this court case, you might expect it to go well, listeners of the pod. But that's where you'd be wrong. It's actually a fucking disaster. It could not go worse. Not only had the owner successfully turned every single player off from the idea of free agency, the propaganda was so thick that some players even testified against Curt FLood in court, believing that if the reservation clause system was gone, that would threaten the future of baseball itself. FLood and his wife divorced during this time. He falls behind on child support for his 5 kids. His drinking problem, though in its nascent stages during this playing career, goes off the deep end. He's unrecognizable, basically, after these proceedings. And here's the thing, he does not win. Not even close. The thing that he's actively fighting for, to abolish the reservation clause, has to be done by challenging baseball's antitrust exemptions. And the Supreme Court is not big on going against its own decisions, I guess, unless you live in 2022 and you have theocratic animals on the Supreme Court. But FLood does not get the thing he so desires. Notably, though, on the second day of FLood's trial, you know who came to testify against the reserve clause? Jackie Robinson himself.
Nice.
Which is pretty cool. So it's not like the trial was, all for nothing. Like, there's important moments like that. I just don't have time to tell the full story and the way that it should be told. The way that's told in the book. So you can get the book and you can get the full story. So it's because of Curt FLood's activism that a few years later, the reservation clause is actually successfully challenged. It's just not in a court of law. Like, he's the guy who opened the door for everyone else to be like, wait, this is kind of fucked up, isn't it? And so 3 years after FLood versus Kuhn, players Andy Messersmith and Dave McNally once again challenged the reserve clause. But this time, instead of in a trial in a court of law, an independent arbiter heard the case. Can you explain this to me? Because I don't understand why this works.
I don't know exactly why this worked out.
In December 1975, the players won the right to free agency.
So I think I have some inside baseball on this one.
Pete Seats.
The 75. So this is where I didn't prepare any. I don't have papers with me, but I totally do have some fun facts, and I'd like to dive into a character real quick. I'm not going to do a character myself.
You can.
I don't want to do a character.
The story's very good.
He's looking at Christine like Christine's going to be like, don't do a fucking character on the podcast.
I thought I saw her hand go up, and I was like, what's going on? It's like, character's not allowed. This is not TBS. USA Network. Guys, come on. All right. Come on. All right. So, briefly, I'm going to tell the story of a man named Charles Finley.
Let's do it.
So he was the owner of the Kansas City A's after they left Philadelphia. I believe he bought the team when they got to Kansas City. He was like an insurance salesman in the area, super rich. Got majority ownership sometime in the late 50s.
Of this Kansas City team?
Yes.
Who are now the Oakland A's.
They eventually moved to Oakland 3 years later. One thing about Charles Finley is that he was a very good insurance salesman, but he could not sell baseball well at all. So the reason I bring him up is in 74, he had a contract dispute with a pitcher named Catfish Hunter.
Sweet name.
Incredible name.
That's like a Byron Pringle level name.
The Oakland A's have some of the best names in the history of baseball. Catfish Hunter and Raleigh Fingers on the same, both pitchers, both on the same team at the same time.
Last name of Fingers and you're a pitcher?
Isn't his number retired?
Both of them are. Yeah.
Whoa!
Incredible. Catfish Hunter was one of the best pitchers in the league at the time. And Raleigh Fingers will be coming back shortly. Another Chekhov's gun.
Ooh!
Perhaps, but a small one. Small.
It's a Chekhov's Glock.
yeah, Chekhov's Glock. So Charles Finley lost a contract dispute with Catfish Hunter, where Catfish Hunter said, you missed paying me $50,000, I'm going to sue you, and I want to become a free agent. He won that case, and he was granted his free agency. And then I think basically what happened was free agency was gonna happen. They were gonna make all the players were free to go. So Charles Finley decided that all of these players are gonna be too expensive. So he was gonna start just trading everybody. So he took every single good player. He took
What?
Catfish Hunter had left. He took Reggie Jackson, and I think there was one player that stayed. It was Vita Blue. But all their good players, they had just won 3 World Series in a row.
Holy shit!
Also, this is a three-peat for the A's. He took all their players and he traded them for pennies to other teams. He traded every single one of them, all the good players.
And the A's still do that to
and
this
we
day.
do it to this day, in his memory, honestly. But Vita Blue stayed on the team. And the only reason he didn't get traded as well is because the commissioner invoked a clause that's somewhere in the contract where he said that I know what's best for baseball, and what you're doing is not good for baseball. He said, stop trading everybody. That's literally against the rules because I said so.
Oh my god!
So he couldn't trade Vita Blue.
So Vita Blue's stuck?
Vita Blue's stuck on the A's.
On a one-man team? Or
It's all my friends are gone?
Yeah, it's just a bunch of not great players.
Yeah, okay.
Not World Series team.
Yeah.
And then Charles Finley sued the league. He said, I should be able to trade everyone.
I should be able to nuke the team if I want to.
And it went to court, and the court said, no, you shouldn't. You signed that contract with the commissioner. The commissioner is allowed to tell you what's good for baseball.
Oh my god.
Apparently, it's a big case in sports jurisprudence. I read that word on Wikipedia earlier. But last thing about Charles Finley, I said he wasn't good at selling baseball. Good at selling insurance. So just a few of the things this is an insane part about baseball history is before it was on every TV, you would have to really sell the team to get people to come and make money. So he would try gimmicks. So the mascot for the A's was an elephant. And he changed the mascot. He actually changed it in Kansas City. He changed it to a mule. They brought a mule in.
An actual mule.
Yes. And the mascot's name was Charlie O, named after himself. It was a mule, an ass, if you will. Can I swear?
Why does everyone fucking ask me that on this podcast? I swear the whole time.
An ass, if you will.
Yes.
And eventually, the reason why he chose a mule was because he wanted to appeal to the Democratic vote.
No.
This is not a joke.
No.
And the mule is the animal of the Democratic Party.
I heard.
So he had a Republican elephant, I guess. So he brought in a Democratic mule to get everyone across the aisle to come to the games. That's true. And then the mule died, and they kept Stomper. God willing. Thank God the Stomper's still around.
Thank God that mule died.
Yeah, I'm not rooting against the mule. He was 20. Mules, I don't know how long they live, but that's
why do you bring
life.
a 20?
No. The mule died when it was 20.
Oh,
okay.
No, he brought the mule in when it was younger, I guess.
Okay.
Horses tend to live around 30, and mules are aberrations of God's creation. So
yeah,
I can imagine they live to 20.
Yeah.
That's probably
another thing that he did. This is a really funny one. The A's do giveaways with stuff. They gave away a backpack a few years ago with this character on it. It was a bunny named Harvey, who would be below the ground, behind the umpire, And when the umpire needed more baseballs, the bunny would rise up from the ground and hand him baseball. This is real. He tried this.
I don't believe you.
This is 100% real. Oh man, I should have done 5 ones with like 4 real ones and 1 fake one.
Oh,
I had
fuck.
to guess. But these are all real.
Yeah.
He also suggested that the entirety of the major leagues change the baseball's color to orange. Not sure why.
You keep track of the ball more.
I don't even know. Like, what do you mean?
Charles Finley sounds like a genius.
He's like a maniac.
Misunderstood.
He's like a crazy person.
Savant.
And then, he also offered all of his players $300 in cash if they grow out mustaches. Which is why Rolly Fingers grew out his mustache, which became literally his like defining feature is this huge mustache like that. It's fantastic. It's like all of the promotional material with him is like a silhouette with that mustache. It's iconic at this point. And it was because Charles Finley thought that mustaches would bring people to the games.
They must have been in fashion.
I mean, I would hope so. I don't know why he's making
or
these decisions.
super not in fashion.
So last thing about Charles Finley.
Yeah.
Is all these harebrained schemes to bring people in. Before the season, I think in like 72, the team didn't have a radio deal. So their games weren't being broadcast anywhere. Every other team in the league had a radio deal. Charles Finley didn't want to pay for the radio deal. So the only radio station that was in his budget was a college radio station, like at a local college. So the A's were broadcast from a local college's radio station for like a whole season. And he went into a couple seasons without that broadcast deal. So he knew how to sell insurance, but he did not know how to sell a baseball team.
You know how to sell this guy to me, though.
He is, I mean, he's like a quintessential American. Just a guy who has no idea what the fuck he's doing.
The White Sox had an owner like that where, like, just one example, he put a wall on the outfield fence that when the other team was batting, it would rise.
What?
Which is just cheating.
Yeah, it's cheating.
Which is just cheating.
Okay, I have one more thing about Charles Finley.
Yeah.
So, Yankee Stadium has this, their right field is way closer to home plate than every other stadium. So Charles Finley was like, I want that. And at the time, there was a thing in the agreement with owners that you couldn't modify stadiums like that. You couldn't. It was like the Yankees got grandfathered in. So he said that he told his announcers to mention every time that a ball would have been out in Yankee Stadium. So every time the commentators would go, that would have been a home run in Yankee. But it was like a fly out because their outfield was deeper. And also, he tried to circumvent this rule, but he read it and he was like, the foul poles have to be far. So he brought it in this is very difficult to describe, but it's like this, and then he brought it in like this, and the foul pole goes like this, and there's like inches of space alongside the side. So he like pushed the foul pole all the way back, so there is fair play right there, but he brought the wall way in. He's just a maniac. Like he's like a mad scientist.
And he's
baseball.
still. This is like now he is, or
no.
Like
he sold the team in like 76.
Okay.
Yeah. He sold the team very shortly after he traded everyone away and then got told that he couldn't do that.
That's fucking crazy. His tenure on the A's sounds like unbelievably rich and deep.
Yeah.
That's a lot of stories for a guy that was in the 70s.
Yeah. It was
that you just knew on the top of your head.
He owned the team from like 54 to like 80.
Oh, okay.
So he owned the team for a minute, but yeah, he's a maniac.
My God, that's fucking awesome.
Yeah, that's what I prepared. That's what I brought.
That's, I think, sincerely the longest I've ever let anyone talk on this podcast.
Oh.
Because I never shut the fuck up on this thing.
All right. Well,
that was enchanting.
I'm honored.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Danica, you have a great roommate. And Danica,
thank you. Thank you.
What'd you bring?
You brought a great time.
Yeah.
Danica came to slay. Danica's also chugging a Red Bull as this is going.
Yeah. I feel so alive right now.
Your hair the dogging it, right?
I was.
No longer.
No longer.
Yeah. So after the All-Star break in 1976, the players and owners signed a new basic agreement that provided any player with 6 years of Major League experience, or it said that any player with 6 years of Major League experience could become a free agent. Circling back to FLood, though, He tries to make a return to baseball after this whole nonsense, but he's notably closed off from his teammates and treated like garbage by the club owners. He keeps like this picture of himself in his locker showing his contemplative, sensitive nature, and like it's very it's very theatrical how I'm going to find the picture for you. I want to show you the picture to show you what's in his locker. God damn it. There we go. This is him. And this is like the picture he hangs in his locker of like, man, I'm really deep and sensitive and I'm going through a tough time right now. Anyways, his drinking problem escalates and he chooses to hide it from his teammates by rooming alone. Not even halfway through his first season back, he leaves a telegram for them. And the telegram says, I tried. A year and a half is too much. Very serious personal problems mounting every day. And then he runs away to Spain and opens a bar.
I did know that.
You did know that?
I did know that part. Yeah.
And so he does not make any sort of triumphant returns to the diamond, as it were. He still, like, you know, has baseball-related shit in his career, like, not managing, doing, I don't know. He does his Curt FLood shit. The thing I wanted to talk about was the ending to the Curt FLood story. And the ending to the Curt FLood story is something like this. At the fairy tale ending, there's like it doesn't matter. Half of what I say doesn't matter. At a 1995 All-Star game, he fainted and blamed it on the heat. He consulted an ear, nose, and throat doctor of what he thought was a sinus infection. He, quote, sounded like Louis Armstrong. At that point,
That's
doctors...
beautiful.
He sounded like Louis Armstrong?
He had a beautiful voice.
And then he got it with Ella Fitzgerald, and then it was happily ever after. At that point, doctors discovered a lump in his throat cancer. They initially gave him a 90 to 95% chance of recovery. The Players Association quietly helped FLood with his medical bills. Having been dropped from the Players' health plan years earlier, FLood did not have adequate insurance to pay for his cancer treatments. The union dipped into its own coffers to pay about $400,000 of his health care costs, which is a baffling amount.
In 98, too?
Yep. The chemotherapy, radiation treatment, and multiple throat operations eventually robbed FLood of his ability to speak. So this is a guy who, like, you know, went to court to speak out for players' rights, and he is robbed of his ability to speak, which is drawn poetically in the book. Anyways, Curt FLood passed away on January 20th, 1997, Martin Luther King Day. 2 years earlier, he'd turned 59. And not a single active player in the MLB attended Curt FLood's funeral. A bunch of like previous players had, but not a single active player had attended the funeral. And to this day, he is not in the Hall of Fame, despite many, many pushes to do so. But they do not recognize this guy for the trailblazer that he is.
It's because the Hall of Fame is made of people who want to hide the labor stuff.
They have it's obvious why he's not in the Hall of Fame.
Is that why Marvin Miller didn't want to be in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I don't know if it's because that FLood wasn't, or that he didn't like the sanctity of like the sport or something. But yeah, Marvin Miller didn't want to be in the Hall of Fame.
Look at him go.
And they got inducted last year.
They did?
After he died.
Holy shit, that's awful.
Yeah.
Why is that even worse?
It's pretty bad, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I didn't know that.
It's pretty gross.
Jesus Christ. And never in the history of ever is like getting inducted in the Hall of Fame like a huge fuck you move.
Yeah.
God. That's brutal. After, so the era of free agency that comes right after Curt FLood, is notable in that players' salaries almost immediately skyrocket. Like, it puts power back into the players to negotiate their own salaries. And I was reading a chapter in Pay Dirt, which is the book I was talking about earlier, called Why Do Professional Athletes Make So Much Money? And it has like a fuck ton of figures detailing player salaries before and after free agency, data that is ostensibly difficult to collect because it isn't public. As it relates to, the data is also related to ticket sales. A lot of the reason why people are like, players make too much money is because they're like, if they make more money, then I'll have to pay more for a ticket to the game, which is just not...
That's not how that works.
It's never how it's ever worked. I've read a lot of blog posts in researching this podcast, which is maybe the only reason why I'm like, oh, there's this idea that, I don't know, people have to pay more if the players are paid more money. But that is just literally not true. It is talked about at length in the book, which I don't think I need to sit here and talk about economics, but it's just, it has to do with demand, not the other way around. Anyways, that is that on the Curt FLood stuff, free agency, blah, 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 blah. Anything to add, my friends? Because I have more after this.
Anything to add? I think I'm good.
Fantastic.
I did my
You had a huge.
I did my Charlie O soapbox. So.
Moving on from that, there is a part in Pay Dirt in the Why Do Professional Athletes Make So Much Money that's like, yeah, players like, you know, I don't know, they list some notable players. And Bobby Bonilla just signed this huge contract, And I was reading it and I was like, oh yeah, this book was written in like the 90s. Yeah. And so they don't know. And so.
Oh, well, yeah, okay.
I want to talk about Bobby Bonilla right now.
Let's do it.
All right. So listeners, I want you to think of the date July 1st. I want you to think, what does that date mean to you? And prepare to have that date changed forever. So we're going to talk about a baseball player named Bobby Bonilla. He was born February 23rd, 1963. He's a Pisces. Slay. He grew up in the Bronx and he went to Lehman High School. He had a deep love for baseball and he really liked watching Reggie Jackson as a teenager. Notably, Bobby Bonilla has a smile that could light up a room. Put simply, he's hot. That's what I have.
Is that editorializing? Is that you?
That's me.
Okay.
He made his MLB debut with the White Sox in '86, and he was fine. The Pirates,
White Sox.
Go Sox. I have a Sox hat on, in addition to my Biscuits jersey, for everyone to know. The Pirates saw his potential, and Bonilla hung onto his starting spot in 1987. It was then that he really broke onto the scene. He slugged 15 home runs, and he had a .300 batting average, which, for the girls at home, I don't. Why is it .3? Is it out of every?
It's out of percentage. Yeah. So it's like 30%.
Okay. I didn't know.
It's out of 1,000.
Fantastic.
Or out of 1.
It's out of 1.
Out of 1.000.
Meaning a .300 batting average, which would be out of 1,000, meaning out of every 10 times on the plate, he hits the ball 3 times.
Which is good.
It's really good.
Yeah, he hits the ball for a base hit 3 times. We could do a whole baseball, breakdown if you want.
I'm ready.
No. It would be 5 hours.
But yeah, that's what I actually put in the script. Every 10 at-bats he has, he'd hit the ball 3 of those times and get on base.
Yes.
A .300 batting average is really good in baseball, which should give us... actually, I don't know. That sentence literally ends. There's no end to the sentence. Bonilla's 1988 season would be even better. He had 24 home runs, and his .274 average was good enough to earn him his first of 6 All-Star appearances. And this is what, there's a Great Falls Tribune article about him in 1991 that says, quote, when he strides to the plate with the bases loaded, he's smiling. If he rips a line drive down the line and he goes to second base standing up, he's smiling. If he strikes out, he's smiling. It's not a forced smile, it's a smile of enjoying your job for better or worse. Quote, I'm making a lot of money. It's the best time to be a baseball player, he said.
I gotta look up this guy's smile. Everyone's talking about it.
You should.
He's bright and cherry.
He's a handsome man, I would say.
Look, Googling Bobby Bonilla smiling.
You'll find every single picture of him. He's a happy dude. I can't believe I didn't include a picture in here for you. That's so goofy of me. Anyways, between 1992 and 1995, his life would change when he signed up to the New York Mets in 1992. The New York Mets refers to the New York Metropolitan Baseball Club, which is such a mouthful that I felt like I had to include it in here. Bonilla becomes the highest paid player in the National League from 92 to 94 when he signs a 5-year, $29 million contract with the New York Mets, period. That's it. She's showing the camera Bobby Bonilla. Can I see the picture that you selected? Yeah, there he is. Isn't he handsome?
He has a beautiful smile.
He does.
I get why he did it so much.
So, again, he signs his contract for the 1992 season, which is the equivalent of $56 million today. Unfortunately, during that season, he fucking chokes. He's terrible at third base. They move him to the outfield. He's pretty good at hitting, but not his previous levels. And he can't fucking get it together. Fans hate him. The press hates him. And he hates the press even more. It's this weird duality where he's this smiley guy behind the scenes, but he's literally being recorded talking to press people, being I'll fight you. 1997. He's traded a few times and he lands on the Florida Marlins in 97. He does really good again, and then they go to the World Series. He hits a really important home run in Game 7 or whatever, and they win.
Or whatever.
That's how I've described baseball in my thing. I like baseball, to be clear. Shortly after, in 1999, Bonilla was put back on the New York Mets. Let me pause right now to talk about Sam Katz and Fred Wilpon. They're the owners of the Mets, and they're also brothers-in-law, which I find strange that you own a baseball team with your brother-in-law.
No, it's just something you do.
I guess. We'll have more things to say about them, but those are their names. Around this time, or I guess it's before 1999, the Mets strike a deal with Brett Saberhagen, saying Saberhagen will receive $250,000 a year from the Mets for 25 years. The payments will begin in 2004 and continue on after that. It's like a deferred contract. So the deferred contract is helpful for the owners so that they can like accrue the money in different ways, like making different investments or whatever, and like pay this guy's salary over time. So they don't have to like choke up the money right now for him. So they make a deferred contract deal with Brett Saberhagen like a few years before 1999. So back to 1999. Bobby Bonilla goes back onto the Mets, again, after winning the World Series, and then chokes again. I'm sure baseball nerds would like to know exactly how disappointing he was, but I just didn't write it down. But during the final game, I guess they lost in the playoffs, and Bonilla was repeatedly spotted playing cards in the dugout while they were losing the playoff game. He's an icon, king behavior. For the 2000 season, Bonilla was on the hook for a $5.9 million contract. And because of this deal they made with Brett Saberhagen, the owners of the Mets decided to do the same thing with Bobby Bonilla. Their plan was to start paying Bobby Bonilla from 2011 to 2035 at a whopping 8% interest rate, meaning that he'd make a total of $26 million for not playing on the Mets for the 2000 season. They wanted to let him go and defer his contract and pay him over time. So, again, we're taking $5.9 million and turning it into $26 million. Why would they do such a thing? Where are they going to get that sort of money? Why would they do such a thing like that? It's because they were some of the most prolific customers of Bernie Madoff. There's the Chekhov's gun going out. And so what they did was literally take his money and invest it with Bernie Madoff. They invested that $5.9 million, invested with Bernie with a promised 10% return on investment. So they'd make 2% on the deal. If Bobby's getting 8, they get 2. So Bernie Madoff goes down to 2008, which is a few years before Bobby Bonilla's contract was supposed to be fulfilled. And so now every year from 2011 to 2035, on July 1st, Bobby Bonilla is paid a little over $1 million in accordance with the contract for not playing baseball. He hasn't stepped on a diamond since 2003. Mm-hmm.
It's arguably more inspiring than Curt FLood.
Literally! I want to put Bobby Bonilla in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, yeah. Oh, he should be there.
This guy, I want to celebrate Bobby Bonilla Day every year by just grilling and doing nothing, because he doesn't do sports commentating. No. He doesn't
do shit. It's awesome.
Yeah, he just collects his check.
Fucking awesome. It's the best. So you did know that? You were sort of acting like you didn't know at brunch? That's part of the Bobby Bonilla story?
No, I actually didn't know about the Bernie Madoff
connection.
Didn't? No, I didn't.
Fucking awesome. Yeah, anyways, that's Bobby Bonilla. That's what I also wanted to say on this podcast. How hilarious that this is a thing that happened. Also, Katz and Wilpin, the two owners of the Mets, had a previous relationship with other Ponzi schemers. They were also embroiled in a huge hedge fund Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, they were always getting caught up in something. They're not like Charlie Finley. They're funny, but they're I don't know. They're just failures. It's awesome.
It is fucking awesome.
This sounds like the Lockheed brothers.
Literally. When the Bayou Group went down, that's the hedge fund that they were also embroiled in. Sam Israel III, I guess, is the guy who went down with the Bayou Group. And I wanted to read you about Sam Israel getting caught. Quote, on Monday. I'm sorry. He tried to fake his own suicide in the following way.
That always goes well.
Quote, on Monday, a car registered to Mr. Israel was found abandoned on a bridge that spans one of the deepest stretches of the Hudson River in New York. It was the same day that Mr. Israel, who pled guilty in 2005 to conspiracy and fraud related to Bayou's collapse, was supposed to begin serving his 20-year prison sentence. Written in the dust on the car's hood, he wrote the ominous message, "Suicide is painless."
He's very corny for that. He's very, very corny for that.
Isn't that fucking awesome?
All right, drama queen, dude, chill.
Literally drama queen.
It is crazy to do that when you're not going to kill yourself.
When you're not. He had no plans of doing that. And then he got caught and turned himself in at some point. I think he went into the woods.
And did what?
He probably got too cold a day in. He was like, I gotta go. I gotta go to jail.
Like a kid running away.
Yeah.
Was he just... What was his long-term plan?
I don't think he had one. I think he saw a 20-year prison sentence coming his way, and he was like,
maybe I'm going to go camping for 2 days.
It was a Hail Mary, if there ever was one.
Yeah, I think fake suicides are never a long-term thing. It's always short-term.
Because you're alive. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So eventually you do get caught. All right, so that's all I wanted to say about Bobby Bonilla. That's the Chekhov's gun going off. You guys want to talk about the minor leagues?
Yeah.
All right.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. One crucial piece of the antitrust exemptions enjoyed by the MLB is control over the minor leagues, correct? Mm-hmm. With what little cognitive processing power I have left, it seems that the MLB counts the minor leagues as just like training for employees.
Yeah.
Basically?
Yeah. It's called like a farm system.
Yeah.
Now, please explain that to me.
So it's kind of where they grow their players and farm them.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like a bunch of different like levels to the minor leagues. People kind of only talk about like 3 of them, but there's like, so there's AAA, which is the highest level.
Okay,
that's where people typically get called up from, and then there's AA, which is where a lot of like prospects kind of start, or like not start, but like some of them go straight to AA, or like really good international players. But then there's like high A. And then there's like, is it low A? And then there's
single A, high A.
What does the A stand for? Do you know?
I actually have no idea.
I have no idea. That's a great question.
I'm gonna Google it while you're talking.
And then there's the rookie advanced league, and then there's the rookie league, which is just like the tickets are free.
And who play? Like, how old are the players in the rookie league?
They're like high schoolers.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
They can be as young as like, I mean, I think 18. But
yeah.
Like fresh out of high school, or from like another country. International players go there. Mm-hmm. And then there's also international complexes where it's like they have these huge complexes of international players that are affiliated with each team, but they're also not required to like do like American labor law there. So they can kind of pay them what they want to pay them and release them when they want to release them and feed them what they want to feed them, kind of stuff.
Yeah, there was a recent at least in the minor leagues, there was a recent settlement that was like...
Are you talking about the unionization stuff?
Maybe. The thing I was just going to mention was like, someone walked away from that and was like, yeah, now they get several meals a day. And I was like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, I think that was part of the CBA talks about like some sort of better treatment for minor leaguers, but they are in the process of they're very like the MLB agreed to voluntarily recognize the minor league baseball players union very recently.
Okay. Yeah, so again, for those perhaps uninitiated, these minor league players are playing 9 months out of the year, and I don't know how they spend the other 4 months.
Part-time jobs.
Yeah, like construction is like a big thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so during those 9 months, they're like practicing, traveling, playing the damn game, doing the whole thing that they do in the major leagues, basically, but for what is poverty level wages. Chris Dennis said, quote, I made $1K a month as a minor leaguer. At the field 9 hours a day, 30 days a month. That's less than $4 per hour, not counting travel time. Don't get me wrong, I was incredibly blessed to have the opportunity to play, but calling what we made a livable wage is laughable.
Yeah. It's just the lack of investment in minor leaguers, just like even from a business standpoint, doesn't make any sense. Why are you paying your future players such such shit that you want them working part-time, physically like demanding jobs where they can get like injured? It makes no sense to me. And then they don't have money to like eat healthy.
Yeah. It's like you want the guys to develop into like productive major league players, and you're not feeding them and you're not housing them. Like they don't get housing.
They don't?
No.
Some teams
started.
Do. Yeah.
But it's pretty recent they started. I think it's going to be part of their bargaining.
Yeah.
But they don't get daily food. They don't get housing. I'm sure their health insurance is not what it should be.
For an $11 billion industry, that is how they're treating the people who are like right below.
Yeah.
The fucking major leagues. That is nuts. And that's, I assume, to save money, but Jesus Christ on the cross.
It's just greed. Like,
yeah, it doesn't even save them that much.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine.
To do the whole like refurb thing, it would be a couple million.
Yeah.
Like to pay everyone a livable wage and to house them all wouldn't be that much.
This, again, there was like some recent, I think it was like a $185 million settlement that was just like basically back pay for the minor leaguers who were like, hey, we worked all of this time and we didn't get any money for it. Anyways.
I think they tried to not pay them during the COVID year.
What?
I think something like that happened where like.
Yeah, no, they did try to not pay them, and then a bunch of major league players were like, you gotta pay those guys, and then they were like, okay, I guess we'll pay them.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That is fucking nut. I had nothing. I only wanted to hear what you guys had to say about the minor leagues, because I sincerely did not understand that it's because they're like in training, which I guess means that you don't have to pay them the same way that you would pay someone who is not a trainee.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people don't share this opinion, but I think me and Nick do probably, where like minor league teams are like really important to like smaller communities who don't have like a major professional sport like thing going on in their city. So like Montgomery, Alabama, or like Portland is it Portland that has the hops?
It's Hillsborough.
Yeah. So
it's a suburb of Portland.
So it's like Portland doesn't have, it's like a major city doesn't have a baseball team. So it's like they do become sort of like really important like community spaces for people who like baseball but don't have like a team. So it's like they are in training, but it's also like professional sports still.
Yeah. Like they do all of the things that you're meant to do in the major leagues, and they provide the same sort of, I don't know, thing that major leaguers do. My goodness. You know?
Yeah, it's not good.
Well, that is a dilly of a pickle. That's, I guess, all I had to say about that.
But they're unionized now, so
they're going to be. It's going to be important to kind of like pay attention to how the MLB, because they're owners, they're going to do some shady shit. But they did agree to voluntarily recognize the minor leaguers union. They're going to be part of the MLBPA, which is the Players Association, which is the name of the union. But I think they're probably going to see a lot of like teams getting shut down, like minor league low level teams probably shutting down.
Which they just did 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Or 3 years ago. They just shut down a bunch of teams.
Pretty dark stuff.
Yeah. Or they unaffiliated, which basically means you're not getting like MLB teams to fund you.
Oof.
Yeah.
And this is, I want to circle the conversation to the owners. Do you two know a lot about the White Sox owner, or do you have an owner of a
Jerry Reinsdorf?
Yeah.
I am upset with him.
And why are you upset with him?
I think it's a sentiment that a lot of White Sox fans share. He's the one that hired Tony La Russa.
Okay.
Which, do you know who this is?
No.
He's an awesome guy. He has 2 DUIs.
Oh.
And that's
just 2.
He only has 2. Don't worry.
So far.
And they hired him as the driver for the team.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way.
So that's what he said to the cop who pulled him over. He said, listen, I'm a Hall of Fame baseball guy, which he was. Because he retired, and then he was inducted in the Hall of Fame because he was a good manager in the 80s.
Former manager of the Oakland A's.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Won a couple World Series.
Look at him go.
Then he managed the White Sox in the 80s also.
Meow.
And then he retired, took a couple years off to drunk drive, and then Jerry Reinsdorf, for some reason, was like, we got to get a little gimmick going. I'm going to hire a 95-year-old man.
Oh, he's 95?
No, he's just old. And he's like 80. And so they hired him, and he sucks shit. And then they let him go for health reasons, which I just think was a cover-up.
You're also leaving out that he has like been reportedly very racist. And the White Sox are one of the most diverse teams in the league, and they hired him to be the manager.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
He was like, if any of my players like sit during the anthem, they're not playing. Like,
what?
Yeah.
Yeah. He said that when he wasn't a manager.
Like
he wasn't
you don't
working.
Have players.
He wasn't.
What are you talking about? And Jerry Reinsdorf was like, let me hire this guy.
He's like, he's perfect.
Let's give him players.
Oh my God, he's perfect.
And it's like the White Sox have a pretty high payroll comparatively to a lot of teams. I think we're like number 6 or 7 or something like that. Like we're not super low on the pay scale, but it's just like the dumbest. We spend money on the dumbest stuff and not good things, and so it's kind of frustrating. And it has been in this off season, specifically for me. So yeah, he sucks. He also owns the Bulls.
I did know that. Mm-hmm. And I have a question for you. Do you have the ESPN Plus or whatever to like watch baseball games?
We have MLB TV. Yeah.
That's what I meant. Do they black out games?
Yes, they black out.
Oh, you want to get into this now?
I do. I don't.
Christian, I'm going to get pissed off.
I want you to get pissed off. We don't have that much time, but that was just a question I had for you. What do you mean you can't see the game?
We can't watch them because they assume everyone's 45 and has cable, but I'm 23 and I don't have cable.
Okay.
So they think we could watch our local games on the television, but I can't because I don't have cable. So I can't watch White Sox games, but luckily I have a boyfriend who does have Hulu Live, and so I watch it. But if I didn't have that boyfriend, I don't know how I would watch my games.
The ties that bind us.
Yeah, I got really excited because I was in LA for work, and I was like, oh, I can watch because I could watch it on my phone because I'm not in Chicago.
Yeah.
So I was in LA. I was like, I had some downtime, so I was like, let me watch the Sox game because I can now. I try and click on it. It said, this game is blacked out in your area. And I was like, what? They're playing the Dodgers. They were playing the Dodgers. I was so upset.
Ouch.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, I had very little else to say about baseball, so I wanted to. That's why I was asking some discussion questions. Dare I say? What is your favorite thing about baseball, and what would you want to change about the MLB?
Oh, what would I want to change?
Yeah,
I think man. I think it would be cool to have the bases be a little bit bigger.
They're doing that.
I know that was
Wait,
the joke.
really?
That was the joke. Yeah, they're making the bases. It was for player safety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say my favorite part about baseball. I mean, it's like, it feels corny to say, but it's nice to feel like you're part of something bigger.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it's just for a couple hours, and even if your team loses, it's like fun to root for something that's pretty inconsequential. Like in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. And it's nice to have something like that where you can kind of just like check out. So that's my favorite part about baseball. Also the sounds. I think it's a beautiful sounding sport.
It really is.
And I would probably make the baseballs orange. I think that's a good idea. No, but what would I change is I would, if I said what I wanted to change about baseball, I probably would be under arrest. So
okay.
Yeah, I'll leave it out.
What?
Has to do with owners and commissioners.
Yeah, maybe the reason why you were suspended from Twitter recently, Danica.
Something about the commissioner, Mr. Manfred.
Yeah.
Someone
Mr.
said something on Twitter, and someone got suspended for it. But anyway.
How long was your suspension, Danica?
Well, it was kind of humiliating because I didn't even notice I was suspended because it's like an account that I'm not usually logged into. I'll say that. And I opened the app, and it made me go in and delete the tweet. They were like,
it was shameful.
It
was do it.
They were like,
look at what you did.
You can't say shit like this.
You're like a dog.
Like a dog, yeah, pissing on the carpet. Look at this.
Yeah. Sniff it. Yeah. No. They made me delete it, but I wasn't suspended for that long. I think it was like 48 hours or something.
Oh, that's not bad.
My favorite thing about baseball is probably what Nick said. I grew up a Giants fan. So we won 3 World Series when I was 11, and then 13, and then 15.
Sweet.
Yeah. So it was kind of a cool. I was thinking about this recently. It's like you are a part of something very, very like exciting and cool, even if your team's bad, which was not the case for me. Now it is. But anyway, because I'm a White Sox fan now. But I was thinking about Buster Posey, who is the Giants catcher. He was a very solid player.
Sweet name, too.
He won all...
He's like a Hall of Famer. He's more than solid. He's like incredible.
Yeah.
You don't have to... Don't be humble for him.
I'm being humble.
Don't be humble for him.
But
please toot his horn.
He had a very short career, kind of. But he played it all with the Giants, and he won all 3 World Series with that Giants team. And I was sort of at the age where I was like, kind of like becoming a person when he started baseball, and then he retired last year. So it's just like I got to grow up like watching this guy's whole career, and like I was like a part of it.
Oh, that's so sweet.
It's nice to have like stories like that, I think.
Yeah.
And if I could change one thing about baseball, there's a lot of people that make baseball special. There's the players, there's the fans. But also, like, I was thinking about this, like, as a kid going in the same, like, gate that you walk into every time, and it's, like, the same ticket person, and you kind of, like, make connections with those people.
Yeah.
Or, like, I go to the same beer guy at the White Sox games. And so, yeah, unionize the minor leagues, and then also, like, I would like every, like, stadium worker to also be unionized also.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the baseball wouldn't happen without them.
Period.
Yeah.
I great answers. Great answers.
What's your favorite part about baseball, and what would you change?
Oh, my favorite part about baseball is the pants.
They're great.
Obviously, it's obviously the pants. It's the ass. It's the pants. It's the belts. It's the like the whole uniform. You can't not look good in a baseball uniform.
It's the beautiful, beautiful smiles.
It's the beautiful smiles and beautiful asses that carry them.
You know, the high five was invented
Glenn Burke,
on a baseball field.
who I think was gay.
Mm-hmm.
He was.
Look at that.
He might still be. I think he's dead.
I think he might be.
But Dusty Baker's alive.
Yes.
Dusty Baker is alive. But
he just won a World Series.
Mm-hmm.
I actually did know all of that. Why did I know that? I don't know.
It's a cool fact.
Yeah.
It was also like 1975.
If I change anything about baseball, I would make them all gayer.
Wow.
Are there any gay players right now?
Actually, I have no
Yes.
idea. Oh.
Not that we know of.
Oh.
But almost certainly.
The reason that I did this episode first, though, is that the Curt FLood free agency stuff, while it originated in the MLB, or like it was the first sport to have free agency in the way that we know it, it sort of bleeds into all the other sports. And a lot of the things that we're talking about here, again, also find their way into other sports. Which is why this is the like sort of a mothership episode. And I feel like this episode is a mothership episode for baseball in general, and it could set up in the future franchising options, talking about like a specific team and like the busted business of a team, because that's something that I wanted to talk about in this episode, but I was like, that's just too many like getting too specific, and I just want to do like a general overview of like why we're here.
The White Sox are a busted business.
Absolutely.
Busted Baseball Bureau.
Yeah.
Whoa. That's the spin-off of this podcast. So that was sort of my takeaway, and I think Curt FLood's story is also really beautiful and worth telling and just so special. I was just very captured reading this, so I was like, I have to make an episode about this. So that's why we sat here and did this whole thing. You two have been fantastic guests. Truly, just top tier. Couldn't have found anyone better.
Thank you.
You felt slay.
Thank you, Chris. I'm glad your audience got to like really see my range, because the first time I came on here, I was just talking about like war.
Yeah, that's so true.
So.
And honestly, they get to see my range too, because I just came off the Monsanto season. This is the first episode back after the Monsanto season.
Yeah.
Which is just sitting around talking about orange baseballs and like.
Well, this is pretty much all I know about, so.
Slay.
Not much range, but.
Hey, you crushed
Depth.
it. Oh, wow.
Depth over range.
Depth over range. That's what we're taking away from this. All right, everybody. That's been the Busted Business Bureau, Season 4, Episode 1. If you like it, donate to Busted Business Bureau on Patreon, patreon.com/BustedBizBureau. That's fucking it. I mean, I got nothing else to say. How about you two?
Nope.
Who's your favorite baseball player? Say goodbye to them.
Of all time, Matt Olson, I love you. Have a beautiful time in Atlanta. I'm glad you're home.
Aww.
Oh, that's sweet. That's like a hard thing for me to think of. On the spot, I have so many.
That's okay.
Probably, honestly, I'm just going to give big shout out to manager Bruce Bochy. Welcome back to baseball. I'm glad you came out of your retirement. I'm excited to see you yell at umpires again.
Nice. Mike Clevenger, you're the only baseball player I really know because you used to play for the Guardians and now you play for the Sox, I think.
Yeah.
Fuck, man.
All right. Bye, everybody.